Namaste, and welcome to Acharya Shunya's podcast, Shadow to Self, a show created to inspire you to step out of fear and darkness into a place of freedom and empowerment. In each episode, she'll explore humanity's deepest questions about your relationship with yourself and others, illuminated by the ancient and non-dual wisdom of the Vedas, Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita. Keep listening.
Now I'm honored to welcome an author whose pen has restored the voices of mythic women with truth and tenderness. I'm talking about Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, who is an award-winning author and poet whose books, including The Palace of Illusions, The Forest of Enchantments, and Independence, and if I remember, The Mistress of Spices, have reimagined, her books have reimagined epics and other cultural givens through a feminist lens. Her work, translated into 30 languages, centers women's inner lives across myth, across history, and across contemporary life and modernity. She teaches creative writing in the University of Houston and actively supports education and her voice. She raises her voice against domestic violence through nonprofits like Pratham and Daya. And I just want to share that when I had just arrived in this country, Chitraji, 30 years ago, probably it was the third day of my being in this country, the family that was hosting me said, "Oh, you come from a literary, scholarly background. We are going to this book reading / celebration of a great author. And Chitraji, it was you." And unknown to you, I was sitting in the audience. And I was enthralled by your book reading. And I think that was The Mistress of the Spices. And then there was an acting out of that, some scene from your book. And so knowingly or unknowingly, I felt so inspired by you. And I felt like I'm going to be okay in this country because I see these powerful women shining the light through their words. So thank you for writing. Thank you for being a hero in my life. And I'm so glad to have you here. You've done the significant work of restoring Sita's voice, her agency, her power. And today I invite you to reflect on what it means to be a Sitayana in these times, which means we who have contributed to Sita's gems, we call ourselves the Sitayanis. And what does it mean for you? How is it showing up? And how has the Sita's Gems project informed you? And it may inform you in your future projects too. Just talk to us.
Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for sharing that lovely story about our past connection. Which, all these things, they're meant to happen somehow. But I am just delighted and honored that, you were there, you remembered it, there was some connection. These things are all magical.
Always.
For me, Sita's story started very early because I had a wonderful maternal grandfather who told me many stories. And so that I'm going to talk about the starting point, which I think led across the years finally to Sita's Gems. And he would tell me stories from the epics, obviously, because those are the most important and popular stories in many households. And he told me the story of the Mahabharata, and he told me the story of the Ramayana. And the story of Ramayana, I might have been like 7 years old at that time, really bothered me because, I felt, what is this? Why does Sita have to go through all of this? And, why does she suffer so much? And why is that suffering seen as okay? Right? Why are we being told, be like Sita, which decode meant Put up with whatever happens to you. Don't make any waves, you know, just be the giving, loving, supportive person, no matter what the cost is to you. And then at the end, when nothing else works, you just exit the story. And I said, okay, something's not right. And at that point, of course, I had no idea I would become a writer. In fact, that happened many years later after I came to this country. But that seed was sown. And then it continued, bothering me as I went into women's activism. Okay, no matter what is done to you, I work in the field of domestic violence, and no matter what the husband does or the people in the household do to you, if you are a good woman, you put up with it for the sake of the family, and that's your life. You deal with it. Sita dealt with it, didn't she? And as I reread the many versions of the Ramayana, I felt, wait, where did we go wrong? Because in the original, she doesn't do that. Okay. But in the picturizations, in the movies, all the things that stay more in the public imagination, she is portrayed in that way. So I began to feel this great need that, with the blessing of the divine, because I truly, truly believe that every word that comes to me is a blessing of the divine, for which I cannot take any credit. I'm going to retell Sita's story. But let's face it, I was scared to do it because that's, people have such strong feelings about that epic. And as time went on, it seemed like people were having stronger feelings about the epic and about Ram's sanctity. And, it was also an inner conflict because I loved Ram in so many ways. But there was something that wasn't fitting. So I had to think about it, but I had to write a lot of books. I had to write books based in contemporary times. And then I ventured into the Mahabharata and wrote The Palace of Illusions from Draupadee's viewpoint. I had to do a lot of thinking about many similar issues, but there was a difference. At the end of the day, Draupadi was human like us, and therefore she could question, and she could, quote unquote, behave badly, and that was okay. And what was I going to do? It took me a lot of inner thinking, meditation, and then finally, I have to share this story with you about how the universe gives us messages. I was thinking of writing this story. I was doing research, but there was something holding me back. And this woman came and said, you know what? I went to Sri Lanka and I went to the Sita temple, which I believe is one of the very few Sita temples all over the world. And she said, I brought you Sita's blessing, this kumkum. And she gave me this vermilion powder, which I have now placed in my altar and it stays there. And I said, okay, maybe Sita wants me to be the vehicle through which she will tell her story. And so the Forest of Enchantments is in her voice. And all the speakers today have pointed to so many things that I considered important and tried to put in the story, that she is the agent of her own destiny in as far as anyone can be agents of our destiny. She is the one who decides to go to the forest. I mean, Ram is telling her, please stay. I mean, everyone's telling her, please stay in the palace. And she's like, no, I love you. I will go with you. I am your helpmate. I am your ardhangini. I am your half, and I will go with you. And as people have pointed out, her strength is so great that Ravan, although he abducts her, really cannot harm her. In fact, treats her with, in many of the Ramayans that I research, treats her with great respect. He is, because of many other things, for example, the mutilation of Surpanakha, which is a big part of why he abducts Sita. He abducts her, but he treats her with respect. He does not violate her. I want to say he cannot violate her because of her inner strength in a position where she has no outer power. And I thought, and those parts of the Ramayana are probably one of the most inspiring ones for me. I think that's helped me live my life. When everything outside is breaking down, what do you do? Well, I'm like, WWSD, what would Sita do? And then I call on my inner Sita. And the other part of Sita that I love is that she has human feelings, but she doesn't waste her energy on unnecessary and useless emotions. When she has been sent off to the forest the second time, completely unjustly. Yes, she goes through sorrow. She allows herself that emotion. Sita taught me that too. There are many places where Sita is weeping. There are many places where she feels despair, but she doesn't end there. She doesn't stop there. She moves through that. She allows her to experience this. That taught me something also about not suppressing, that, you experience, you allow the storm to move through you. And that is the way in which the storm makes you stronger. And then she turns around and she is so practical. She's like, I got these two babies. I got to bring them up. Let me focus on what's the best way of doing it. So, I think I learned a lot about problem solving just from living with Sita's story. I think Mother Sita taught me so wonderfully. One of the first, possibly the first, like single mother in our literature, bringing up children with such great love, teaching us the lesson that she teaches her sons all the good things, and she never badmouths her husband. I think I learned so much from her, just practically on the practical level. But then Sita also teaches me the most important lesson is sometimes you have to stand up and say, that's it, that's enough, no more. And, I have lived a dharmic life. I've lived according to my values. And what you're asking for me now, even if all of society says that that's what should be done, if my inner compass says, no, I will not do it. What strength! Without anger, okay? Without negativity. She's just strong in herself. She doesn't need to depend on those external expressions of disagreement. She is strong, and I think she's such a role model. And, in the Forest of Enchantments, where I asked Mother Sita, I said, what were the things that you didn't say in the Ramayana that you want me to say? And she says, I'm doing this for all the generations of women to come, my daughters, Sita's daughters. I really feel I'm one of Sita's daughters. She's just affected my life and continues to affect my life in so many wonderful ways. Resistance in the most positive, most spiritual, strongest way, pulling on that divine core within each of us.
Jai Sita. Thank you, Chitradi. That was so beautiful, so real. And, you said, be Sita. And especially the women folk around me, they would say in Hindi to me, Sita bano, be Sita. And we had to pluck out of the cultural basket what it means to be Sita. And I remember when I got married for the first time and I had something to offer. I had some ideas that were not acceptable. I was taken aside and counseled and said, be like Sita, be seen, not heard. So it's like, zip up your mouth. In a very polite way, I was counseled to rise in my spiritual karma. And I'm wondering, because you're an author, I'm an author, probably all of us here are authors, audio and word-based authors. Like we gave through the Sita's Gems audiobook, Chitraji, her voice back, so that people know that she was not just seen as an accompaniment. She had a voice. And for example, in your retelling of the Sita, you asked her, what do you want for your daughters to know? And she teaches us. Probably would you agree that the biggest work we can do now is to restore this illusion that Ramayana is that her voice is marginal, that it's not, and so it's not important. Sometimes fewer words spoken are the real words that we need to hear. All the rest is noise. And so I thank you for writing your book. I thank you for writing all your books. And I thank you for sharing from such deep, vulnerable place how you too were brought up with this completely distorted version of Sita and you had to look for her. And I hear you about the fear because it's real. Because we're messing with people's long held beliefs, but really what we're doing is interrupting patriarchy. So, what do you want to say about this, about the homage to her words, and by writing these books and preparing these audiobooks?
I think today more than ever, we need this. We need the message of Sita's gems, which puts Sita in the center.
Right.
And I think Sita's gems brings out some wonderful things. But first, I must go on an aside to say how much I love Hanuman and how big a part of the forest of enchantments Hanuman becomes, because of all the relationships that Sita has. I think the sweetest one is with Hanuman, who is completely accepting of her. She is his mother. She is his, dearly beloved mother, and he will do anything for her. And I think what was really interesting for me, apart from just that sweetness, being a mother, I was really invested in that. She's the one he can joke with sometimes, right? When she's feeding him much later and he's just eating up stuff before she can get him more. And just in many places, he is the one who comes in her hour of deepest darkness. And he is the one who really this is part of the Sita's Gems passage that I read out and I commented on, is he says, "Mother, this is terrible. Why are you putting up with this? Sit on my back. I'm going to take you back right now. Let's just cut through all of this." And she says, "No, because Ram is the one who needs to come and rescue me." I had that feeling as I was reading the Ramayana that really Sita is the embodiment of the goddess. She could have found her own way out of Lanka. I really think she could have. And if not, at no other point, here's Hanuman saying, "Come on, let's go, Mom. Let's go back home." And she's like, "No, because I would like it to be Ram's glory." So look at the maturity over there. Look at that maturity in being willing to show other people's greatness, and yet knowing fully well who you are. Sita never loses sight of who she is. Okay. And I think that's a lesson for us. Okay. And also, it's okay. Sita has her moments that it's okay not to be perfect. All right. Yes, we women, deep down, we are perfect because we are the embodiments of the goddess, but it's okay to show some anger, to ask for things that are illogical. Bring me that golden deer. It's okay, because what is this that we are being taught? As a woman, you have to be perfect. You cannot have any problems. You cannot have any issues. That's just not human. Even the gods in our pantheon are not like that. But we as women today in the world, especially in the culture that I come from, that's expected of us. And as a result, what happens? Our heroines have to be whitewashed. Well, I strongly believe that the power of Sita, A, should not be whitewashed, and B, really, if you look at her, cannot be whitewashed. Her power is right there in her story. We're just looking away. I want to say one more thing, which is, sadly, I think as we've moved more and more into contemporary times, this wrong viewing, this patriarchal viewing of Sita has become stronger in many parts of the world, in many parts of our communities. And we need to be aware of that. And we need to, really what shall I say, illuminate her true greatness. And also to remember, as Sita always did, the greatness of Sita does not depend on putting down Ram. That is not the project of Sita's gems or my writing or any of your writings about the goddess or about Sita. Sita's greatness is a thing in itself, complete, 100%.
Sita's greatness is complete in itself. It's not a comparison. It is not a competition. It is wholeness, and it's an indication. The entire Ramayana is an example for us humans, and her story, her circumstances, like all of us, and how she thrives, and how she is real through all of this, is our lesson. And thank you so much, Chitraji. This is beautiful. You simply speak the truth, and you don't make a defense for her. You don't plead for her. You just say it like it is, and you lay the agenda for us. And I hope more and more people read your writings on Sita. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm learning so much just from listening to everybody. It is.
It is.
It is a great
Quite an
blessing.
assembly here. We're very, very fortunate. And I think our listeners would be just delighted to discover more about Sita after this conversation. Chitraji, you said we have to be alert and we have to do our part, and here we are doing our part. So that makes me feel good. So we're going to change the way we have been talking. And I have been mainly discussing one-on-one with each one of our guests, but now we will pivot. And those of you who are watching the video version of this episode, we are now going to be in gallery mode so you can see all of us. And we will be playing an audio clip. This is Canto 97 of the Uttarakhand from the Ramayana, in which Sita, this is some of her last words, calls upon Mother Earth, her true mother, to receive her. And the earth opens. And she disappears into the earth. And this isn't defeat, it is completion. It is a moment when a woman who has walked through every fire, externally and internally, finally chooses home, to come back to what is her territory. Not the palace in Ayodhya, not the forest in Valmiki's ashram, but her eternal self. And before we play this, I would like you to consider, what does it mean to leave a situation, not out of despair, but out of full inner agreements? What does it mean to return not to a person you love, not to a palace which will give you comforts, but to your original wholeness? What happens when the world is clearly unable to understand you? Because is it enough that you understand yourself? Sita's returning to earth, in my opinion, is not the end of the story, but the beginning. This is the liberation. This is the return. And after playing that audio file, we will hear from Michael, the producer, a few minutes contextualizing this. And then I have invited Anina Raoji to lead this section forward. So we're having a lot of fun in this podcast section because she knows the Sita's Gems project so intimately. And we all appreciated listening to her. So I would love to participate in the circle that she leads for us. Those of you who are listening to us in the audio only version, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel at Acharya Shunya, so that you can also see our faces. You can see some of the beautiful images that will accompany this audio playing, and also you will be able to look at some other clips that are connected to my. Now, let us sit back, close our eyes, and simply listen to these beautiful words.
Acharya, can I give just a little interjection here on setting up the scene, or would you rather I
Okay,
do
so then I will re-speak something, and then
Okay.
I'll invite you, okay?
Okay. Also, by the way, it's good because you broke up there for a moment, and I don't know if that was captured properly.
Okay. Before we begin listening to this beautiful audio clip, I would love to invite Michael, the soulful producer of Sita's Gem, to contextualize what we are about to listen. Then we will listen to this, and those of you who are on YouTube watching the video version of this podcast, you can also enjoy beautiful images from Sita's Gems project, images of Ma Sita, and the whole assembly gathered around her when she speaks. And you will enjoy the whole experience in a more audiovisual kind of way. If you are someone who is listening to us only in the audio version, then invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Acharya Shunya, so that you can catch the video version of this episode, because this is going to be visually rich also, along with all our conversations and all our heart. After listening to the audio, I will invite Neena Raoji, who is a co-host of the entire Sita's Gems project, to lead us through informal discussion and a circle, because Neena Raoji knows this project so deeply at a heart level, and we love hearing from her. Now it is time to sit back, close your eyes, and let's listen to Sita's words.
And as we dive into listening to this passage from the Valmiki Ramayana, the original unabridged text of Valmiki Ramayana moves very slowly. So this one canto, Canto 97 from Uttarakhanda, I'm just going to give you a very brief setup so you see the context, is Ram and Sita's sons, Kush and Lav, have grown and come of age. And sage Valmiki teaches, he had cognized the story with the Ramayana, and he teaches it to Kush and Lav. And they go out kind of on a journey like Krishnadas might do in modern times, chanting the entire Ramayana. They actually are invited to chant in Ram's court because the sages loved them so much. And Ram hears his own story chanted by his own sons, Kush and Lav, and he realizes who they are. He decides to invite Sita to come back to prove her innocence once again. Unthinkable. So sage Valmiki brings Sita back to the court. And before Ram speaks, Valmiki testifies to Sita's innocence and purity, as if it's really needed. And that's the setup for this canto we're about to hear. So now I'll say again, close your eyes and just listen to this beautiful passage from Valmiki Ramayana.
Canto 97. The earth opens and Sita enters. Thereupon Raghava, having seen the beautiful Vaidehi, answered Valmiki with clasped hands amidst the assembled crowd. It is as you say, O blessed one who knows the law. Your words alone, tainted by no flaw, are sufficient to carry conviction to me, O Brahmana. Vaidehi proved her innocence in the past too, in the presence of the gods, and she made a solemn affirmation then, and therefore I took her back into my home. It was because of loud and persistent public scandal that I again abandoned Maithili from fear of that censure, though I was convinced that she was innocent. You should excuse me for having done so. I know, too, that these two, Kush and Love, are twins, and my sons. But I could give my affection to her again if she should be again shown to be unpolluted before all the world. Realizing that Ram wanted Sita to swear her innocence, all the great gods came there with a grandsire at their head. The Adityas, the Vasus, the Rudras, the Vishvadevas, the company of Maruts, the Sadhyas and all other gods, the great sages, the Nagas, the eagles, and the Siddhas all came there in glad expectation. On seeing the gods and the sages, Raghava again said, "The sages' flawless words have brought conviction to me. May it be given to me to bestow my love again on Sita, when she has established her innocence before the world." All who were present were agog with excitement on hearing that Sita was again to give proof of her innocence. At that moment the auspicious wind god caused a gentle breeze to rise, which brought great delight to that vast concourse, being pure and holy, wafting divine fragrance and ingratiating in its touch. Thrilled by it all, they who had come there from every corner looked upon it as a marvelous thing, which even the imagination could not compass, such as could happen only in the Krita age. Seeing that all were present there, Sita, clad in ochre-colored raiment, spoke with folded hands and bowed head, her eyes cast on the earth. If it is true that I have never so much as thought of any man other than Raghava, may the goddess, the queen of Madhava, open her door wide and take me to her bosom. If it is true that I have always worshipped Ram in thought, word, and deed, may the goddess, queen of Madhava, open her door and accept me. If what I have said now is the truth, that I have never looked upon anyone as greater than Ram, may the divine consort of Madhava give me entrance into her abode. As Vaidehi was thus swearing, there occurred an extraordinary event. From within the bowels of the earth rose up a splendid celestial throne, borne on the heads of great serpents of endless prowess, who had taken godlike forms. That throne was of a superb natural beauty. The goddess of earth, seated on it, welcomed Maithili with open arms and placed her by her side, and then descended from whence she came. Seeing her seated on the throne and entering Rasatala, the celestials let down a continuous shower of flowers. Simultaneously rose shouts of applause from the gods, who said, "Well done, Sita! What could be more fitting to one whose character is so noble?" These and many other such words were uttered by the rejoicing gods, who thronged the upper air as they saw Sita enter the earth. And all the sages in the sacrificial hall and the great kings could not refrain from expressing their amazement. All creatures, moving and non-moving on the earth and in the upper air, Danavas with their gigantic bodies, and the rulers of the serpents in the netherworld were likewise affected. Some shouted joyously, some were plunged in thought. Some looked at Ram with winkless eyes, and some, thinking of Sita, were stunned into bewilderment. It was Sita's entry into the earth that caused these sensations in their minds. For an hour, all the world seemed to be held spellbound in solemn wonder.
Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matra Rupena Samsthita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matra Rupena Samsthita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matra Rupena Samsthita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. So as I was listening to that passage, these lines came to me from a section of the Chandi Path describing the goddess in all her many forms. And we've been talking about, like Chitra pointed out also, she has human qualities as well, Sita Devi, as do we, and as does the goddess. And we ask for her form, and that's what we're asking for in this prayer. But what I'll just say one thing about this little bit that we listened to just now. And the thing that really got me was when she goes down into the earth seated next to the Queen of Madhava. They say that the people who were in audience were plunged in thought. And that's hopeful if that's the case. So I just wanted to say that. But I would really love to hear Acharya Shunya ji. Why don't you share with us a little bit about how you feel about what we've just heard at this sort of ending of this epic?
Relieved. There couldn't have been a more thoughtful ending. And it feels like it was a slap to everything that needs to be needs to be notified that the woman has agency. Of course, it is supernatural and it's mythic and mystical. But like I already mentioned, it's like returning to your home. And whatever is home for you, and whatever is home to you in the tradition and language that you follow, that's okay. But we all have to discover that. But it's a great catch, Nina ji, that line. And some were plunged in thought, and probably we are the descendants of those thinkers because we continue to think and churn and draw inspiration, ideas, and guidance from it. So that's what I would like to say. Yeah, and let's talk to everyone.
Yeah. Michael, since you were the instigator of this whole thing, let's hear a little bit from you about.
Thank you. First of all, I want to mention that the narrator we just listened to was Kaya Midland, who did a beautiful job with that passage. really, we took our time on that one, doing over and over to get it just right. So it's beautiful to hear. I mean, there's so many different angles. One is just Sita from her perspective. And then what happens next? Because if you remember, with our whole group of Sitayanis, everyone asked me to do Ram's response, which was our extra epilogue, our passage 25, where I do Ram's response. And even the setup, and I want to go back to a couple things what Mirabai said about retellings. Retellings are wonderful. But I'm just going to remind, because Valmiki is like a father to me, so if I seem ever defending him, you know why, that in the text, when you actually go into the unabridged Valmiki Ramayana text, there's no condoning of Ram's behavior. Both in the Agni Pariksha, where all of Hanuman, Lakshman, everyone is saying, why are you doing this? It was never set up that Ram's was right action. And the whole text is like a teaching piece. In the first episode, with the fire episode, Brahma and the gods come and kind of give deep teachings to Ram on who he is, because he had forgotten his own nature, maybe through the struggles of the war. And here again, Ram threatens to destroy the earth after Sita returns to the earth. He has a huge, really pitta. Lots of anger comes up. How dare you take my Sita back? If I could recover Sita from Ravana, I will take her back from the earth. Once again, the gods come and correct Ram's behavior. So to me, it's a very cosmic setup. And I never experienced it really as Sita giving a slap. And then Candace Badgett does a beautiful, she's the one who does the commentary on this. For me, and for my background, Sita is returning to her own nature because, here's the other piece, more and more I see how Sita orchestrated the whole Ramayana. She's the Shakti, the active ingredient that propels the whole story, if you look at it from that vantage point. And it's not changing anything. It's not retelling anything. It's just reframing it, looking at it from a different point of view. She orchestrated this whole thing. Of course she had to be abducted by Ravana, because there was a time. Why did they come down in the first place? Why did Ram and Sita come down as avatars? They were there to purify the world of ignorance that was embodied by Ravana. The Rakshasa element, the forces of darkness, had waxed strong in the world. And unless they were taken out, and taken out completely, eradicated from the world at that time, with the exception of Abhishana and his family, the darkness would have taken over. So that was the secret mission, but wasn't so secret, because they were very clear at the beginning of that passage, the beginning of the story, what everyone likes to forget. The gods petitioned Vishnu to incarnate, but not just Vishnu, also Mahalakshmi. They both came down as a pair. And I don't know any of the incarnations of Vishnu, the 10 incarnations, or the 9, who came down as a team, a dynamic duo. They worked together in concert. That's something that absolutely is woven into the fabric of the story. They each played their role. Sita played her role beautifully. And here, at the end, I feel Sita not played her role. She is Prakriti. She is nature. She just returned from whence she came, because that brings, and this is the value of Uttarakanda. Uttarakanda is the transcendental level of the story. People say they want to end it after Yuddhakanda when they lived happily ever after, but this is not an American movie, it's an Italian movie, or something like even better. This brought it, Uttarakanda brings the story to the transcendental level. And then what happens next as the story unfolds when they go to Brahmaloka, when Ram goes to Brahmaloka after Sita is gone. They are united in their original form. Sita and Ram are united in their original form as Purusha and Prakriti. And there no difference exists. No separation exists. They were absolutely woven together. There was stress in the whole world when they were apart, and now they're reunified. This is that reunification at the deepest level of our own being, the deepest level of our own nature. I completely agree with Mirabai that we absolutely have to experience this on the human level, which is the whole story. But now we do get acknowledge, wow, at the deepest level, this is where we find peace. So that's my cosmic take on it. I hope I didn't wax too long.
Mirabai, why don't you take the baton?
The merging, the melding of form and formlessness is important across the spiritual traditions, that all the creation stories, all the cosmologies begin with some kind of big bang, where the formless poured itself into a dense substance, and it was so radiant that there was an explosion, and out of the explosion came the multiplicity. And the beauty of one of the many beautiful things about the Hindu epics is that they take place on this vast cosmological scape where it takes a long time for these things to unfold, and ultimately there is a mending of the vessels, as they call it in Judaism. It's the Hebrew term is tikkun olam, that what was once whole and then shattered becomes whole again. Where formlessness exploded into glorious form, the lila of the gods, the play of the gods. It's not like an accident. Someone once told me in the Jewish mystical cosmological system of tikkun olam, it's not like God dropped the vessel and said, oops, and the precious container broke. It's all part of the plan, as you all have been pointing out with the Ramayana. And in this plan, Sita, the embodiment of form, of nature, knows what she's doing. And in the end, her return to the earth feels to me not like a defeat, as you're saying, well, that didn't work out. I guess I'll just go back to where I came from, but a completion of this cycle.
Mhm.
When you're describing that about the pot breaking and coming back together, it just reminds me of that beautiful craft that comes from Japan, where they put the pieces of the pottery back together with gold, and then it actually enhances the beauty and the strength of the pot.
And reminds us always that our wholeness and our brokenness are inextricably entwined.
Exactly. Thank you, Mirabai.
You're welcome.
Chitra?
Well, I love that passage. It is so powerful. It brings up so many emotions in me: sadness, reverence, just astonishment, a certain kind of joy. But I love the fact that it's her mother coming to take her home. So it's the divine feminine in two different forms, maybe the earthly form and the divine form, and they go together. And, she sits right next to her mother in some embodiments, in some picturizations. She's sitting on her mother's lap as she goes back to where she came from. So, I liked what Michael said. There's a lot to be gotten from what Michael said about the entire story and the divine aspect of it. And it's very important to balance those two, because sometimes I think we pay so much attention to the divine aspect that we don't give enough weight to Sita's suffering, but her suffering is in some ways a part of her divine journey and our divine journey. We were sharing, many people today shared, the difficult parts of their journey. They shared them so beautifully and openly. So I think Sita reminds us that there is pain, there is external suffering or suffering on the mental level, but that through all of it, we are divine and we have the strength of the goddess within us. So that for me is what that last scene embodies. Sita leaves, she leaves on her own terms. She leaves, and in that leaving, she is transcending in some ways her mortality. She is transcending in the way that when we undertake our spiritual journey, we begin a transcendence with the grace of the gods, with the grace of the goddess, with the grace of Sita. So I think when I look at that scene, I'm right there with Sita. I'm right there with her. And ultimately, that final passage is a mystical passage. I could try to talk about it, but it's beyond words. Once Sita enters that chariot, she doesn't say anything else. She doesn't need to.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when Acharya, when you said that you felt relief when you hear that passage, where I go with that is that when she descends into the earth, she's going into the sanctuary of her own heart, her place where she is standing firm. She recognizes who she is, and she shows who she is in making that decision, and then she is in the protection of the Great Mother. So I want to, Acharya, can I ask you one question because of the way you've named this series of programs? It's called Shadow to Self. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you, because you know about these things. In this Devi Stuti, there's one line here that says, Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chaya Rupena Samsthita. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. The way in which it's translated in this text that I'm looking at, it says, I bow again and again in reverence to the goddess who is present in all beings as the shadow of the real being. How would you say? What would you say?
This is the beauty of worshipping Shakti and trying to understand her. A lot of traditions have put everything bright and light in the godly sphere. And to explain what is in the shadow, we had to conceive of the polar opposite of God, a demon or demonic or evil. So we had to separate the good and the evil. And then we were asked as seekers or aspirers for God to only walk the narrow good path. In the beautiful Shakta tradition or beautiful teachings around Devi Mahatma, etc., we notice, and this is a non-dual perspective operating. What if the lovely and the ugly, the good and the bad, the wanted and the unwanted, the dharmic and the shameful, what if this is all God? What if this is God as in the great omniscient dimension? What if this is Brahman, the ultimate reality, and Goddess is Brahman? Ma is Brahman. And that is why in this specific stuti we have Chaya Rupena Samsthita, the shadow, Vritti, the thinking, which we are trying to calm down in Raj Yoga, Trishna, that thirst, that vasana, that never seems to get quenched upon quenching. And so what this did to me, this specific suti was, and I'm going to tie it up with what Mirabai ji also said about the rebel, bhaktas. I make the goddess responsible for all those aspects of me which I'm not necessarily proud of. And I often tell her, and Mirabai ji, you should listen to the way I talk to her. I'm like, this is your problem. If I'm stupid, half of it is you. If I am in the shadow, half of it is you. Because I have no astitva, no identity apart from you. And so when I chant this, it actually allows me to give everything to her, everything. And probably this is where the journey to shadow to self in duality or in transactional reality, we have to say, okay, there is the shadow part of me and there is the self part of me. But in non duality, it's only one thing, and it's God. So that's my take on it.
It just identifies the whole of Sita's being for me when I see those words. So, and what I was saying earlier is her ability to hold everything is what really inspires me, and without realizing she has been the guiding force through my life. I see it now.
Thank you so much, Neena ji, and thank you for being our anchor. And at this point, we are coming to a close. And I want to thank each of my guests today, Michael ji, Neena ji, Mirabai ji, and Chitra ji, for helping bring Ma Sita's voice out of the shadow, metaphorically speaking, into the center where there is light, where she has always been. She never really shifted from it. And as explained by Michael and others, there was this Leela or divine play going on. And as Chitraji and I also believe strongly that in the divine play, we also see a human existential issue and we see a choice. And metaphorically, she chose to say no and choose herself, the greater self, for whatever that means for her in that story. So, thank you, dear listener, for walking with us from shadow to self through the forest of all kinds of trials and tribulations we face, ultimately towards spiritual freedom. And I invite you to check out sitasgems.com. I invite you to rate and review this episode. Up till now, for the last 3 years, we have received all 5-star reviews, and I want to thank you for your love and your kindness and for your enthusiastic listening. I do encourage you to share this episode and also leave your comments, because that would give us more fuel for recording more such intense conversations around Sita. May her courage live in each one of us. May her dignity echo in us. And may her choosing herself, which is everyone's self, the divine self, awaken a greater journey within us. Until next time, I am Acharya Shunya, and this is Shadow to Self.
Ayodhya Sita, Ashoka Sita, Rama Vallabh, Sundari Sita. 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 Sitaram, 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 Sitaram. Ayodhya Sita, Ashoka Sita, Rama Vallabh, Sundari Sita. Ayodhya Sita, Ashoka Sita, Rama Vallabh, Sundari Sita. Ayodhya Sita, Ashoka Sita, Rama Vallabh, Sundari Sita. Ayodhya Sita, Ashoka Sita, Rama Vallabh, Sitaram, 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 Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, prem se bolo 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 Sitaram. Prem se bolo Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, 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 prem se bolo Sitaram. 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 Prem se bolo Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, 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 prem se bolo Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, prem se bolo Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, prem se bolo Sitaram.
If you loved this episode, there's a way to show your love. Just go to acharyashunya.com and make a donation to support the production of this podcast. You can also rate, review, and share this episode with others, live on YouTube every month. Browse her online wisdom school for her latest course offerings, and thanks for listening.